Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the first of a 7 series to CBD Alley's Health Hacks. And what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about CBD, what it is, but really how it is related to inflammation. And we're going to talk a lot about inflammation and how inflammation is the root evil to many disease states, obviously in response to COVID, but also when we talk about arthritis or chronic pain or autoimmune diseases or diabetes. So I want to tell you a little bit about root cause of inflammation, what it looks like, and how CBD fits into that picture. So this is the first of a 7-part series. Our second part series will be we'll be talking more about pain, pelvic pain, chronic pain, arthritis, lots of pain that women get in particular, rheumatoid arthritis. And then the third will be digestion, gas, bloating, congestion, mucus, irritable bowel, Crohn's, a lot of autoimmune diseases that look at or that have digestion as an issue. Number 4, we're going to look at stress, anxiety, and brain fog. Again, we're going to always talk about how CBD and the endocannabinoid system fits into these topics, but you'll be able to have specific questions answered if you have any on these topics. Number 5 will be menstrual cramps, menopause, brain fog, a lot of the issues surrounding peri and post-menopause. Number 6, breast health, cancer, bras, the endocrine system, mammographies, all sorts of things to do with our breast health. And then number 7 is going to be around sleep. So those are our 7 topics. Today we're going to talk about inflammation, and let me share the screen with you guys real quickly. And okay, so the first thing we're going to see is cannabis, inflammation, and pain. So I started Green Alley CBD about 3 years ago. I was in orthopedics, osteoporosis, pain management. I've done a lot of Western medicine management surgery, and started to get into cannabis about 6 years ago. And I've worked with the biggest cannabis medical marijuana companies in the Bay Area. And I've also worked with now the leading CBD doctor in the hemp space for the last 3 years. And I'm just going to preface it by saying cannabis includes marijuana, and that's medical marijuana that you get in the dispensary, and then also the hemp plant, which is what I sell, has no THC in it, comes from the hemp plant. The hemp plant looks exactly like the marijuana plant. Not exactly, but very similar to the untrained eye. So they're 2 very different plants, but they have these things in them called cannabinoids, and cannabinoids are CBD and THC. And by the way, we make our own CBD and THC. So when we make our own THC and CBD in the body, that's why the plant's cannabinoids work in our endocannabinoid system. It's a big system in our body. It does all the regulation of everything. So the endocannabinoid system regulates our nervous system, which has to do with anxiety, which has to do with pain, which has to do with autoimmune diseases, regulates pain, inflammation, the endocrine system, which is our hormones. Literally every system in the body is regulated by the endocannabinoid system. So this system is ridiculously important. And yet, unfortunately, medical marijuana, because the Western medicine is not they're not bringing medical marijuana on board. And so they're not learning about the endocannabinoid system. So that's what I'm going to teach you a little bit about, but we're going to really dive into inflammation. So get your pens out. Now, when we talk about a plant versus a pharmaceutical, that's what's important. A pharmaceutical, you'll see on the right-hand side, is a synthetic molecule that suppresses some action in the body. What happens then is now it's going to create side effects that need more pharmaceuticals. Whereas if you look at the plant-based medicine, it's a natural molecule. It's like a vegetable. It's the CBD plant is almost identical to the CBD-like molecule that the body already produces. And that molecule in the body is called 2-AG, or 2-arachidonyl glycerol. It's a big word. All these words have, you've never heard them before, so it's all going to be Greek. We also make the THC-like molecule, and that's called anandamide. And when you've heard of the runner's high, that's the anandamide that we are producing in the body. Thus, when they found anandamide, they decided THC is going to be, we're going to call that the bliss molecule, or anandamide. With this plant-based medicine, you rarely see side effects. No deaths, no permanent side effects. Now, the side effect, and I'll bring one up that we saw just the other day. Woman had, she has some injury in the foot, and so she was using my CBD Epsom salts and the balm, 2 topical applications. But when there's something going on, say in the foot area, and there's a lot of neurotoxicity down there, we need to detox. We need to pull those toxins out. And the feet have big pores, which is a great area to pull the toxins out. So what happened was her feet got totally inflamed, and she actually felt not so great. I don't know if she had a headache, but she didn't feel good in the rest of her body. And what that's a sign of is something called a Herxheimer reaction, where we're detoxing her body too quickly, and the liver can't process it. It sends it out into the blood. We might get a headache or a hot flash and might feel a little tired. That all went away, but what it means is now we have to detox those feet a little slower. So maybe put in half as much CBD, or maybe just start with regular Epsom salts and put a teeny bit of CBD in there, and maybe soak for 20 minutes versus 30 minutes. So different people will have different side effects, but they're extremely rare. And the biggest side effects we have are just what I just explained. Those are the biggest side effects. Sometimes a headache, sometimes a hot flash. If that happens, then we reduce the amount of CBD we're taking, and we build up slowly. Okay. Conditions that CBD helps with, literally it's all over the board because of this endocannabinoid system. So you guys out there might have anxiety, or some of you may have chronic pain. Some of you may have digestion issues. All of these issues are regulated by the endocannabinoid system, because the endocannabinoid system is the biggest regulatory system in the body. So when we're looking at anxiety, depression, insomnia, or even chronic pain, that's where a tincture will help. When you have, you've got a bottle of liquid and you squirt it under your tongue, it brings an anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety in the bloodstream. And that's what you want. You want it to be in the bloodstream 24/7. Just like when you take a pharmaceutical, you have to take a certain amount of pharmaceuticals so it's in the bloodstream all day long. Same thing with CBD. We actually metabolize this molecule every 8 to 10 hours. So you usually have to take the tincture under the tongue, squirt it under the tongue like this. You usually have to do it twice a day, okay? Once you know what your CBD doses, then you can go to something like a capsule or a gummy. I also have gummies, okay? So when you look at arthritis, nerve, and muscle pain, some of these, like arthritis, or if you have back pain that has to do with the spine not being in the right area, or some of the bones around the nerves are compressing. When it's something physical like that, usually you need a two-pronged approach. You need a tincture and a topical, a cream. So if you've got arthritis in your elbow, you're going to put a cream. And then if it's really bad, you're going to add in a tincture. Digestion issues, normally a tincture. Always before physical therapy or before you work out, you always want to use CBD before. You want to keep the inflammation away. So you don't want to follow it. You want to keep it away. All right. So again, here's the CBD plant. It looks very similar to a marijuana plant. Okay. It has little buds, and on these buds, I don't know if you can see this, but if there's a bud right here, there's usually a little glob of oil on the bud. That glob of oil, that's what they're extracting. That's what they're taking out of the plant. That's the magic, is the oil. And in that oil, we have cannabinoids that are anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, and actually are neuroprotectant, which means that they actually protect the nerve. So some of the companies I work with are working with ex-NFL athletes who have had multiple concussions. And what happens is these athletes tend to start to get this dementia type disease in the brain called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Guess what? CBD helps with that. It helps the nerves from fizzling. When those nerves fizzle out, they tend to die, and then you lose brain function. So very, very exciting, this cannabis plant. Okay, real quickly, CBD hemp has no THC. It's all CBD. It's a dietary supplement as of actually 2019, 2018 in December. It's safe to travel with. It can be shipped to all 50 states. You can see it online and Amazon, but the problem is there's no standards. That's why I started my company. You can see CBD on the shelf, and it might not have CBD in it. It might just have hemp oil, which is a really great oil, but it's not an anti-inflammatory and it's not an anti-anxiety. Doesn't have any CBD in it. So you really have to look at the label. You have to make sure there's third-party testing and the like. Okay, CBD marijuana comes only from the dispensary. Whatever state you're in, CBD from the marijuana plant has 5 to 25% THC in it. It can get you high. It can get you dizzy. It's a Schedule I substance. You're not allowed to travel across state line. You have to go to the dispensary. So even if you're getting your CBD from the dispensary, that CBD has a certain amount of THC by law that could get you high, or it could get you dizzy. So very, very different. There are some regulations in the cannabis industry for the dispensaries, but the testing is all over the board. All right. So let's get into why does CBD work? If you look at, so sorry, this is very blurry, but if you look at all these dots, there are CB1 and CB2. There are receptors. This system that's so pervasive, there's receptors all over our body, including the skin, including our immune cells, including the brain. And look at that. There's more endocannabinoid receptors in the brain than all of our other receptors combined, which means that cannabis has a huge effect on the brain. CBD will not make you high, but it affects the brain in that it's an anti-anxiety. It will allow the neurons in the deep brain to not be overstimulated. That's called your fight or flight. So Lots and lots of benefit to CBD in the brain as well. It just, of course, will not get you high. All right, so we're gonna go into inflammation. This is the big bad, inflammation. If your doctor has told you that you have some sort of condition that ends in itis, itis, anything itis means you've got inflammation. So gastroenteritis, some area in the GI system, in your digestion, is on fire, is inflamed. Arthritis, your joint is inflamed. Okay, encephalitis, tendonitis, your joint in your elbow, bursitis, all of those are inflammation. Okay. And a lot of times your doctor will say, we don't know what it's from. Arthritis is an age disease. It absolutely is not a sign of aging. It's a sign of your body breaking down. Absolutely. And our body does tend to break down when we get older. But I can guarantee you there are many 95-year-olds out there who do not have arthritis. And most likely it's because of the way they eat. Most of our inflammation that comes into our body every day that the endocannabinoid system and the immune system has to fight is inflammation. And then we're going to go into the food. I'm going to stop right here and then we're going to go into the food, okay? So inflammation comes mainly from our food. Most of us have some sort of food allergy or a food sensitivity. And if you have a food sensitivity, it means that your digestive system can't digest that food very well. And that creates inflammation. Well, what's so bad about inflammation? Well, when we have inflammation, we can't digest well. Inflammation creates fibrosis. It creates, like in the gut, it creates a leaky gut, little holes in the gut. When we have inflammation in a joint, it creates pain. And over time, that inflammation, when the immune system can't stop that inflammation, then the inflammation goes on this autoimmune type response, and that's when they call it an autoimmune disease, or they call it arthritis. It's the same thing. Both of those things are actually our immune system going out of whack. And part of that is what happens with COVID. With this cytokine storm, our immune system can't kill the virus, so it starts throwing out all of these big bad inflammatory cytokines. Those are molecules. So how do we stop these molecules, right? Well, we detox, and CBD is excellent for detoxing, but what we do immediately is look at the foods we're eating or look at the environmental toxins that are coming in. So there's 3 or 4 main sources of inflammation. Food is number 1. Stress is number 2. And stress, by the way, is cumulative. So, I had a very stressful job. I was in the operating room for 25 years. I'd be there on a Friday night at 11:30. I'd be there at 6:30 in the morning. And it was pretty stressful. And I was a single mom, and all of that stress compiles and doesn't go away. And so unless I started doing meditation or exercise, I've always been into exercise, so I've been able to detox that way. But 2-3 years ago, I had what they call adrenal fatigue. So there's all sorts of ways that inflammation and stress can affect the body. The other thing that affects the body is grief. That's another emotional, traumatic experience, childhood trauma, and then we've got your environmental toxins. And I'll go into environmental toxins in a later segment, but certainly our pharmaceuticals are becoming environmental toxins because we're putting them in the body And after a while, the liver can't handle it, the kidney can't handle it. For instance, ibuprofen actually promotes more inflammation the longer you use it. Aspirin, it'll kill the stomach. So there are a lot of different pharmaceuticals that are actually creating inflammation. But the main thing that we bring into the body unknowingly every day is food. So I'm going to go over the top 3 food categories that create inflammation. And then I'll lump the 4th one all together. Number 1 is sugar. And we all know that sugar actually creates inflammation in the body. And when we look at the inflammation in the body, it means it's clogging up the body. So we have all different types of mechanisms and pathways where our body is chugging along, creating ATP for our energy, creating different T cells and B cells for our immune health. But when we get inflammation, all of these pathways start to slow down. Our blood vessels start not pumping as well. They're not as elastic, okay? So we usually, like if you are a diabetic, you'll see this inflammation affects the exterior parts, your fingers and your toes, because that's the furthest away from your heart. That's the furthest place that the pressure of the heart gets that nutrition to. So the nutrition with the blood vessels starts to get less and less, and you get less oxygen, less nutrition to the nerves here, then you start to lose your nerve function. And that's why you start to get pain, especially in the feet. We get a lot of burning, we get pain, and then it turns into numbness, and then we start to lose muscle function and other things. So if you're starting out with pain in the feet, let's look at the root cause and try to figure out what inflammation is causing all of that irritability down in the foot. Okay, so sugar, number 1. We know that cancer feeds off of sugar. In fact, cancer is so good at grabbing the sugar. When you bring sugar into the body, the first cell that eats that sugar is a cancer cell. That's how bad sugar is for us. And then the second, my second on the list in inflammation is grains like pasta, bread. I don't care how organic or whatever it is. This body is not meant to eat a lot of carbohydrates. We're just not. And this country, the FDA, has allowed the food industry to take all the minerals out of the flour, all the fiber out of the flour. So when we talk about soy, flour, corn, rice, any kind of grain you can think of, it's a carbohydrate and it's creating sugar in the body. So that's creating inflammation, okay? Third on the list creating inflammation are dairy. 75% of the world has a food intolerance or a sensitivity to dairy. Think about it. Cows come out of the womb a couple 100 pounds. They grow to a couple 1,000 pounds within a year. Those proteins and those fats in the milk that create such huge growth are meant for cows. They're not meant for us. We don't digest them well. When we don't digest something well, it creates inflammation. Okay, do you see how this works? So if you wake up one morning and you go, my pain is on fire, all my joints are on fire, look at what you ate the day before. Was it carbohydrates? Was it sugar? Or was it, my next one, dairy? Dairy is, dairy also, well, I think I just said that, I'm sorry, dairy, 75% of the world has an allergy to dairy. Hi, Ruth, we're gonna put you on mute on everything because we're recording this, okay? And Okay,
Okay.
so everybody ask questions if you need to in the chat box, and we'll keep going. So the three biggest ones for inflammation are sugar, grains, and dairy. And here's something that's really interesting. When you when you are a vegetarian, most vegetarians um, have a high vegetable oil diet. What? Vegetable oil is something that they're putting in all of our boxed foods. Even like whole grain bread has vegetable oil. So even the other day, I looked at my nuts. I'm like, oh, I love roasted nuts. What's it roasted with? Canola oil. And canola oil, vegetable oils are horrific for us. We're not supposed to be eating those as well. So vegetable oils are actually from an industrial seed oil. It was not developed for us to eat, but they make food taste really good and make everything really yummy and greasy and kind of easy to glop together. They make things gloppy and tasty. Look for vegetable oil in the label and do not use vegetable oil. That's pretty much the fourth biggest inflammatory food. And then lumped into the rest are pharmaceuticals. Vaccines, by the way, have, like the flu vaccine has mercury in it. It's the last vaccine to contain mercury. But some of these things are not only are they inflammatory of nature, but they're neurotoxins, which means not good for the brain, not good for the nervous system. Okay. Okay. And then processed meats, MSG, refined carbs. We know all about those things, but literally, if you wake up one day and your joints are on fire and they really hurt, think about what you ate the day before and think about maybe trying to lessen that product. Because if you have less inflammation coming into the body, then your body can start to heal. We can reverse arthritis. Okay, we just have to keep out the inflammation, keep up the CBD, and keep up the nutrients. I'm going to talk about three major nutrients, and then if you have any questions on inflammation, go ahead and throw them up on the chat box. But the three biggest supplements that we can take that actually are synergistic with CBD are vitamin D. And we know vitamin D modulates, brings up, or actually it reduces inflammation. So we know vitamin D reduces inflammation, just like vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiency is highly correlated with COVID. People who have gotten COVID and people who have done the worst on COVID have low vitamin D levels. Okay. We also know that the darker your skin, the less able you are to absorb vitamin D. So, everybody has to get their vitamin D level tested. Everybody. I'm out in the sun all the time. I'm pretty tan, right? I'm a white girl, but I'm tan. Well, 10 years ago, my vitamin D level was highly deficient. I was at 21. And at 21, that would have put me in the worst category for COVID. So today, my vitamin D level is 115 ng per ml. What should you all be gearing towards? Your goal should be 80 to 100. Now that's a blood test. You ask your doctor, what's my blood test vitamin D level? What's my vitamin D blood test level? It should be close to 80 to 100. Mine is 115. Both of my children have very high vitamin D levels and they take CBD. Both of my children's partners got COVID. Both of my children were with their partners for the 3 days prior to their symptoms, which means that they were absolutely exposed, intimately exposed, and neither my 20-year-old or my 23-year-old got COVID. Okay, vitamin D level in CBD. It's very simple. So I say. Okay, let me share my screen with you again, and we're gonna look at the inflammation. Let's see. Okay, so when we have inflammation, we have all these white blood cells, plasma, macrophages, cytokines. That's what we learned about in COVID, right? These cytokines are what creates this cytokine storm in our lungs. But with an acute injury or a chronic injury, these cytokines are doing they're doing too much damage. There's too much inflammation. So we need the anti-inflammatory molecules to come in, and that's what CBD does. It brings in the anti-inflammatory. So let me see if I can. Let's see. All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing because for some reason it's not working, but that's okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about was inflammation in arthritis, for instance. So if you're taking CBD, what CBD does for arthritis is it stops that cytokine activity. It stops the immune system from throwing out the inflammatory cytokines every day, every day, every day. That's why it's going wah, 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 and it hurts every day. When you bring in inflammatory food on top of that, the next day it's like wah, 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 even worse. So when we bring in CBD and we reduce our inflammation, we can actually clear up arthritis. So what CBD does is it actually modulates cytokine activity. When we need to kill something, it brings in the inflammatory cytokines. When we need to stop the arthritis or stop the autoimmune disease or stop that automatic cytokine activity, then CBD through the endocannabinoid system reduces the inflammatory cytokines and increases the anti-inflammatory cytokines. So it starts a process in the body. And if we lower our inflammation in the first place, that can happen really, really quickly. So vitamin D, CBD, and then the other third supplement superfood that I always talk about with inflammation is omega-3s. Omega-3 fatty acids. Those are the good fats. Those are the fats you find in avocados, in nuts, in eggs, in salmon, mackerel, herring, anchovies, sardines, all the little small fish that are on the top of the sea. They don't have mercury in them. So, and they've got great omega-3s. Salmon can have mercury in it. So you want wild caught Alaskan salmon. So you want wild caught salmon. But those are really the excellent foods for your omega-3s. You can also supplement with a good vitamin company. It's very important that you have a supplement that does not have mercury in it. So when you look for, let me see if I have some. So I use Designs for Health. This company makes sure they do third-party testing. They make sure that there's no mercury in the fish oil that they're getting their omega-3s from. So that's very important. Okay, so I have a question about arthritis again. So I went over arthritis. Another form of inflammation, and we're going to do like 4 more minutes, and then we're done. Okay, so if you have any questions, please type your messages in the chat box. The other form of inflammation could be or is congestion. So if you wake up in the morning and you're all congested around the head, the nose or the throat, and you have mucus, that's a sign of inflammation. So when we wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night and our symptoms are worse, that is because at nighttime, our immune system kicks into gear. That's when we're sleeping, that's when we're resting, but that's when we're healing. So when you go to bed at night and you've got tendonitis in the elbow, put your CBD cream on your elbow before you go to bed, so the immune system doesn't have to fight that inflammation. It can begin to heal that inflammation, that area of the body that's inflamed. So if you wake up with inflammation, with congestion, that's a signal that there might be, there might be dust. You might be allergic to the dust in your pillow. You might be allergic to the paint on the wall, or the the flame retardant in the couch, a million and one things, or you ate something that inflamed you. So think about that when you sneeze, when you have congestion, when you have pain. Those are all signs of inflammation. So I hope that helped a little bit. When we talk about pain in other areas of the body, it's all the same. It's itis, it's inflammation. When we feed the endocannabinoid system, the system knows exactly what to do with those endocannabinoids, with that CBD. If we've got 3 things going on in the body, the system will put the CBD towards what's most important at that moment. So the question of the day, another question I have is, when should one take the omega turmeric CBD capsules, and should it be taken when you're using the elixinol? So I have a tincture, and then we have capsules. So if you take 10 drops of the tincture under the tongue, that's 10 milligrams. That's your dose. When you take the capsule, you can take them at the same time, and that's what I do right before soccer. So I'll take my tincture, so I have a tincture in the bloodstream right away. Then I'll take the capsule at the same time, and I know that it will get digested, and when it's through the digestion system, 45 minutes later, that 15 milligram capsule will start to work in my body. So I want a double whammy when I play soccer. I'm nearing 60. I still play soccer, but I get a lot of joint pain. I've been playing sports my whole life, and so I got a lot of joint pain. So I want to keep it at bay. Most people, if it's just an everyday thing, you can do the tincture in the morning and the capsules right before you go to bed if you wake up in the middle of the night with pain. So you want to use the capsule when you know you have at least an hour to go, because it'll take 45 minutes to an hour to get into the bloodstream. Okay? And omega 3s and turmeric, both of those are anti-inflammatory, and they are both excellent synergistically with CBD. And I think that wraps it up. So CBD comes in many, many forms. We just did a collaboration last year with award-winning Thanksgiving coffee. So we've infused our local CBD hemp with the beans. And so every morning you get 5 to 6 milligrams of anti-inflammatory CBD when you start your day. We also have winter mint tincture. This is a brand new one I have on the website. I'm just about to put it on the website. It's a winter mint flavor, yummy, yummy flavor, kind of like peppermint, real sweet, has stevia. And then we have these good night capsules, which have CBD and melatonin. So melatonin and CBD actually go well together. Energy drinks, all sorts of things that we're going to see in the next couple of years, that CBD is going to be infused into our food because we need it so much. All right, that does it. That's our 45 minutes, 42 minutes. If there are no more questions, I am going to stop the recording, and thank you very much. Go to greenalleycbd.com, and you can ask any questions, askgreenalley@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day. Okay, and so again, first one was inflammation today. Our second week will be pain, chronic pain, arthritis. We'll be talking about pelvic pain, migraine pain. The third week, we'll be talking about digestion, gas, bloating, congestion, mucus in the throat, different digestive problems, autoimmune diseases that have digestive issues. The fourth week we'll look at brain fog, stress, anxiety, overwhelm, depression, some of these mood disorders that we're all getting because of COVID, because of not being able to have connection, family, community, et cetera, et cetera. Number 5, we'll go over menstrual cramps, menopause, post-menopause, brain fog. Number 6, we're going to go over breast health, cancer, the thyroid, bras, believe it or not, endocrine system. We're going to talk about breast health. And then number 7, almighty number 7 is sleep. And we have a big number 7 for sleep. Okay, that does it. Thank you for tuning in, and go to greenalleycbd.com to find supplements. Ask me any questions at askgreenalley@gmail.com. All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.